Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Navigate the gauntlet of uncertainty the world throws at your business with SAP. Whether it's a tropical storm hitting your warehouse or a short supply of those little plastic twist ties, SAP can help you tackle those unexpected crushing setbacks with its AI-powered capabilities. To pivot to new suppliers, automate paperwork, and source the twist ties you need at the price you want, so your business can stay unstoppable. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The right debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
Don't even think about changing that radio dial. It's the left versus the right. And this is going to be one of our most dynamic shows ever because we have with us the Honorable Richard Weinberg, former judge in this town, and certainly one who has stayed close to the issues, involved himself in a lot of great services to all our communities. And he is here to talk to me about the issues of the day. Now, this is the left versus the right. Now, what really is great is that you want the left and the right to fight. So what we fight over is which one of us is going to be on the left and the other on the right. So, Your Honor, thanks for joining me.
Governor, let's stipulate consent and agree. Neither one of us is extreme left or extreme right. We're both Democrats. We're both common sense Democrats. We're moderates. We're centrists. And we're motivated by what's in the public good and the public interest.
Absolutely. So I want to start the discussion with something that I'm familiar with that just happened last weekend. And it had to do, well, first of all, laying myself to be hopelessly honest, I am a New York Mets baseball team fan. I saw the first Mets game in 1962. I was frustrated then, and I am now. But last Tuesday, I was watching the game, and they have an excellent announcer who announces the game, mostly because he went to Columbia University with me, and his name is Gary Cohen. He actually went 3 or 4 years after me, but, I try to attach myself to him. And he was announcing the game, and, it's moving along, and he says that the Chicago Cubs had played, I think, San Diego on Sunday. And there was a player on the Cubs who was not at the game, which, the sports writers and some of the fans found to be quite odd. The next day was a day off, but the sports writers asked the Cubs why he wasn't at the game, and they really wouldn't answer the question, or they gave an answer that was debunked. So finally, in a sense, with their backs against the wall, they revealed that this player had gone to Arizona for the memorial to Charlie Kirk, and that he had asked permission from the team. The team granted it, and he went there. But for some reason, they didn't want to talk about it. And usually in these types of situations where someone is really touched by the illness of a family member or something like that, they have what they call a bereavement list. They didn't even use the bereavement list because apparently they were trying to help this guy by kind of covering it up so it wouldn't become a big story. Now, I said all that, Your Honor, to say what really touched me about the whole situation, regardless of what everybody did, is how politics has infiltrated everything. It's infiltrated sports. It's infiltrated, the way television stations are run. It's infiltrated so many areas that we can barely find ways to maintain civility because everybody is checking to see if it's politically correct before they do something. Now, I did read later on that 2 members of the Arizona baseball team also went to the Kirk rally, but they went early and went back and played their regular Sunday game. So I ask you, have you seen more of these types of examples where things just used to go, basically easily, and then all of a sudden they get disrupted by some kind of political interpretation?
Well, that's an excellent question. So, as Richard Nixon used to say, let me say this about that. We live
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Left versus the Right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Left versus the Right. Debate Heavyweight Slugfest.
We're back on The Left versus the Right. Please stay tuned later on here on WABC. There's a lot of music. There's Music Radio 77 still exists right here on WABC. You don't have to go back and try to go through those old CDs you have or, any of that stuff. That will be coming up a little later on. But right now, we're talking about some of the serious issues of the day, and we're talking about it with one of the most serious people who is involved in the assessment of these issues, Judge Richard Weinberg, who is on Katz and Cosby Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock. Sometimes on Thursday and Friday, they let me sneak in and be part of the show, and I'm grateful for that. But, Your Honor, so what say you to the assessment that members of both parties went over the line in terms of, as you said, weaponizing the prosecutorial agencies against individuals?
Well, it's clear to me that the Democrats, with Biden as the President of the United States and Judge Garland as Attorney General, and with the various FBI directors, weaponize the Justice Department, the prosecutorial function, the U.S. attorneys, local DAs, state AGs against Trump. And I think that was wrong. And I've said so, and I've said that consistently.
Now, before you go on, I have a question. Joe Biden, I remember in 1988, he was a senator, and he was imitating a very famous speaker in London. He was using all of his material, and somebody went back and found it, and he got busted, and he just looked like a jerk, and he had to get out of the race.
Biden was a serial plagiarist. Wasn't the only time he did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, you can do it all the time. They just have this little word, if you ever used it, quote. And
it's hard to quote, David, it's hard to quote a whole speech.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Biden got caught doing.
I didn't think about that. That's pretty bad.
There's a lot of stuff in between the two quotation marks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just so I didn't think of him as being a particularly antagonistic personality or vindictive personality. He became president in 2020, and I was really surprised when they would go to that length. Do you think it was because the campaign that President Trump waged after the 2020 race, claiming that the election had been stolen from him, that some of the tactics he used, they were countering and inevitably exceeding anything he could do because he was out of office.
I don't know what was inside the mind and the motivation of the Biden people, other than the fact they hated Trump. But remember, as you recall, when Trump went down the escalator announcing his candidacy in 2015, I guess it was.
Yes.
And he was a marked man from that point on. They thought of him, they constantly say he's a threat to democracy, he's a fascist, he's an authoritarian. He's always been a marked man by a certain segment of the political left. And so the danger when you're a marked man is you should always be wary of giving your enemies ammunition against you.
Now, Your Honor, just for a second, I see it a little differently. When he first went down the escalator, I remember Hillary Clinton imitating him just to be funny. You know, she wasn't attacking him or anything like that. And even I found him to be very interesting. So here's somebody who's a big business owner, a big TV star.
Never run for anything. And he's gotten into this race, and he's making sense. And I think what happened is that he was making so much sense, and he was reaching, so many precincts in our country that the other side thought that they could take him out just by insulting him. Well, when you insult Donald Trump, it's like putting a needle in his arm and injecting, some kind of substance that makes you bigger and stronger. Do you remember the movie, the remake of Howard Hawks' 1932 classic with Paul Muni, Scarface? It was the remake was with Pacino.
Yes.
And there's a famous scene towards the end when he's fighting the infiltration of all these gangsters from the cartel from Latin America, and he's up there shooting them down by the dozens. And he says, when you play against me, you play against the best. One of my favorite scenes.
Yes.
Okay, when you play against Donald Trump in the game of insults, you're playing against the best. Nobody can match him. He's quick-witted on that level. He's funny. He's entertaining. And he takes no prisoners.
If I could interject just for a second. November of last year, I think late October, the Alfred E. Smith dinner occurs. And I go to the dinner, with my wife, Mary, and the number of people there, and John's there, and, we're all kind of standing around, and President Trump's come in, and we're all talking to him. And I always thought that I could find a way to get him just to talk to me. So I walked up to him, and what I said was the truth. But I said, you know what, Mr. President? You really hated one of my staff members, and I wish I had listened to you. And I start walking away. I know he wants to know who it is. He comes after me. He leaves a bunch of people and walks after me, and he says, come on, David, who was it? And I tell him that it was, with all due respect to his soul, Dick Ravitch, who was my lieutenant governor, who tried to hire a lobbyist while he was lieutenant governor. Who would you be lobbying to? There's only one person over you. That's the governor. And he said, no, I'm not going to borrow $6 billion to cover a budget deficit. I'm going to cut it through programs. So Trump is like, that guy, every time we try to build something, he got in the way. And he's carrying on. And all of a sudden, he grabs me and comes to like my side. So we're now standing next to each other, not facing each other. And he says, no, we're just talking about an old friend. We really miss an old friend that we lost recently. And it's the media. They've got all the cameras on us, and they think, because we were both pretty vociferous, that we were arguing with each other. And I thought, what a quick thought to put your arm around the other person and make it look like it's a love fest, which actually, sort of was. But he has that ability. There are other people who have it, but he has that ability at times when others would not have any idea what to do.
Well, you raise an interesting point about it, the escalator situation. Funny thing happened on the way to that presidential election, Governor. You had Hillary Clinton, who thought she was anointed to become the president of the United States. You had Trump, who didn't really believe that he was going to win. You had Hillary very concerned about the left wing of the Democratic Party in the form of
Bernie Sanders. So you allow Bernie Sanders to go into the convention, into the primaries, into the caucuses against Hillary, because they wanted to make sure, give him an opportunity to be heard, and then they'll co-opt him, and his people will back her, and she'll have a united Democratic Party. I respectfully submit that was a tragic mistake on the part of our party, the Democratic Party, allowing him in. He had no legitimacy. He had no right to be in Democratic primaries. He was a socialist. He was an independent. He was never a registered Democrat, not the days he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont, not when he was in the U.S. House of Representatives, not as United States Senator. He may have caucused with the Democrats in the Senate or in the House for convenience sake for himself and for Democratic leadership, but the fact that he's never a Democrat. They never should have allowed him in because he's a Democratic socialist. He is not a Democrat. And that fed has been fostered and gone on and on and on to such an extent that we now have the Democratic Socialists in the cusp of taking over our party, David, the common sense, traditional Democrats who believe in strong foreign policy, economic development, law and order. They've come in and they're taking over safe borders. They've come in and they're dominating the discussion and the momentum. And they do that by waging wars in Democratic primaries. What are your thoughts on that? Zohran Mamdani has flipped the script even more than Bernie Sanders could have, because Sanders basically, considering himself a socialist, like you said, he never really convened with the Democrats and that kind of thing. But Zohran Mamdani decided he was going to take his brand of socialism into the party itself and try to attract young men and women, basically well-educated, have interesting careers in front of them, like to hear, as in a way we all do when the king falls and someone else gets put in. And at the time he got in, Eric Adams was the king. He was the mayor and that kind of thing. Well, Adams gets into trouble. Cuomo barely campaigns in the rest of the primary because he thinks he's going to win, and that goes awry. Curtis Slee was not in the Democratic Party, so he was not a factor there. And before you know, Zohran Mamdani wins the primary, first by 8 points, and then when they counted ranked choice voting, he was up to 12.5% ahead of Cuomo, and has never been Cuomo's never been that close in the polls as he was at the end of that particular primary. And I think this was because we Democrats do have this soft side, I will say, for people who seem to be looking for a home and people who seem to not understand all the issues, and we come along and try to help them out. And while we were doing that, somebody was organizing internally against the party. And look at this. Now, if you really want to vote for a Democrat, you've got to vote for Andrew Cuomo or Mayor Adams, because Curtis Lee was not in the Democratic Party, and Zohran Mamdani is the candidate of the Democratic Party.
Well, I think the problem is, in the old days, there's something, as you and I both know, called Tammany Hall. And the old Democratic organizations, also known as the Democratic Machine,
right,
in each of the 5 boroughs or counties, had strong organizations. They had a farm system. They brought people through. They were able to be of assistance to new immigrants into the country, which is the basis of those kinds of organizations, help people get through the bureaucracy in government. And fundamentally had organizations that would go block by block. You know, what you and I would call election districts.
Oh, yeah.
So I, as a young kid, was a captain in a regular Democratic organization club in Brooklyn. And I had 3 EDs, election districts. And I was able to go door by door in each of the apartment buildings and the private houses.
Turn them out.
And turn them out. Those days are long gone.
Yeah.
Long gone. So now the question becomes, when there's a vacuum, somebody will always fill the vacuum. That vacuum was filled by the Working Families Party, by the unions, and by the Democratic Socialists of America. And that's what you have. So the so-called Democratic organizations today in each of the 5 boroughs or counties, David, are paper tigers.
Yeah.
They're very ineffective. They don't have the organizational strength. The people go in the streets, get the petitions signed, go door to door, or everybody but the so-called Democratic organizations. And there is no real Republican organizations in this city.
Not really, no.
Except for Staten Island.
So my father was 33 years old. He was a lawyer practicing in Harlem, and he wanted to run for the assembly. And he went to the leaders and told them he wanted to run for the assembly, and they told him it's not your time. And so he comes back in 64 and says he'd like to run for assembly, and they tell him the same thing. In 1965, the state senator at that particular time was promoted to a position in the governor's office, and they came to him and said, you know, you've been loyal, you didn't go outside the party's wishes, you didn't get antagonized because we said no to you, we'd like to run you for the Senate. And from there, you know, his career really was spawned. And he didn't seem to have any problem with the way he got to where he was. And I think that's part of the issue, is that even internally in the parties, but particularly in the Democratic Party, there come times when you might have to understand maybe this isn't time for you to be doing this. And I think that we're seeing the results of it here, and I just hope that somebody will pull themselves together before November 4th to change what seems to be an inevitability of a socialist becoming the mayor of New York City. If you and I had collaborated on a book and actually proposed that, we wouldn't sell one copy.
But maybe we get $20 million the way Harris did.
Yes.
And we know a little bit more than she does.
Yes, I think.
So if you want to do it, we sign up, $20 million, you take 10, I'll take 10.
By the way, she almost embarrasses me when she speaks. She doesn't seem to put together her thoughts before she talks to people. She has too many, motions. I don't know why I'm doing it when I'm on TV, but, just. But
I'm watching.
Yes, but these snide remarks she says, it almost seems like she's uncomfortable having to be there. She had one little moment when she had it out with Trump a little bit, and I think even he said he was surprised at how, when she went at him, she could do it. But there's no organization. She's walking around like she's the organizer. Is she kidding? She's got to be out of her mind. We have about a minute and 50 seconds. The floor is yours, Your Honor.
Well, the booth is telling me that we don't have the minute and 50 seconds, so we're going to have to take a break, Governor, and then we'll have to come back. So I guess let the record show, which is the name of my show, on Sundays between 6 and 7. And if you miss it between 6 and 7 on Sundays, you can always get the podcast. But let the record show that you owe me 1 minute and 54 seconds when we come back from our break.
It's the left versus the right. The left versus the right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the left versus the right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
We're back on the left versus the right, and also the left side of David Paterson's brain trying to talk to the right side for when the commercial break should occur. And we are with the Honorable Judge Richard Weinberg, who serves with me on the Cats and Cosby. I'm on Thursday and Friday night. He's on every night with Rita and John, and he is taking a little time out from that. By the way, he has a show on tomorrow at 6 a.m. So before we go forward, Your Honor, why don't you tell us who we'll hear if we wake up at that hour?
Well, hopefully you'll wake up and you hear the show between 6 and 7. But even if you don't wake up in time, you can always get the podcast. And the important thing is I have a very special guest, the former governor of the state of New York, David Paterson. So, Governor, when we finish this, we'll have to take care of that.
This is known as reciprocity.
That's well, after all, we both come from political backgrounds.
Absolutely.
So the answer is that's the show. Governor Paterson will be our special guest co-host, along with Eric Levine, a noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, and Jesse Garcia is the vice chair of the state Republican Party and the current chair of the Suffolk Party. It's been a great show. It'll be even better having Governor Paterson join us. So you owe me 1 minute and 54 seconds. And what I want to say is this. If you ever went in the old days in politics to an Irish wake, where the Irish controlled the political apparatus in New York, and one of the elected officials died, all the politics was done about succession at the funeral or at the wake.
Right.
So
it was a coronation.
It was a coronation.
More than a grief session.
So that's right. And the beer was passed around, the food was good, and they would cut the deals. The assistant DA, the assistant corporation counsel would go to the assembly, the assemblyman would go to the state senate would become a judge, or Congress, and that's how they did those things. And what was interesting about that was it was actually a very successful vetting system because they knew who the players were, the men and women of quality and experience and ability, and so they wouldn't let flaky ideologues or inexperienced people move up.
Right.
And there was actually a very good vetting system, and that system died when the so-called
reformers.
In 1961.
Yeah.
1961, the reformers beat the organization. Bob Wagner, who was running for mayor again, ran against his own record, took on Tammany Hall in the form of the county leaders and Carmine DeSapio, the leader of the Manhattan organization. And that was the beginning of the end of the Democratic organization because the district leaders no longer, and the county leaders didn't have the power they used to have. And it became the elected officials, the council members, the assembly members, the state senators, the Congress people who started getting the power. And then the consultants and the lobbyists started getting the power, and the unions started getting the power. They changed the whole nature of the political system here in New York.
Your Honor, since we started with baseball, I thought we might end with it. In 1948, when Babe Ruth, who had the record for most home runs in a season and for most home runs in his career, passed away at 53 years old. And they had a big funeral, and everyone came to the funeral, and apparently, one of the guests said to the other, because it was a hot day during the summer, and he said, "I sure wish I could have a drink right now." And his friend said, "And so would the Babe."
I didn't realize Babe Ruth died so young.
Yeah, Your Honor, he was 53 years old in 1948 when he passed away. He did a lot of charity work when he retired from baseball. No one really knew he was that sick until his passing. But as we talk about what's going on in the city these days, I think it is really quite interesting how this how this election for mayor may fall, because right now, Zoran Mamdani, whatever you think about him, looks like he's about 25 points ahead of Governor Cuomo. Now, there are polls that say he's 15 points ahead, but, They're polls, and then they're polls, and then there's who's polling.
Well, that's exactly right. And I never really trust polls, and it depends who's paying for the polls.
Right.
And what their purpose is. But look, this is let's go to, as you and I have discussed before, there's a politics of electability and there's a politics of governing. And you have to have related skills, but they're different, excuse me, it's a different skill set. So let's talk about the politics of electability. Right now, you have all these candidates running against one person, Mandami. That's number one. So you have a divided opposition. Divided opposition means that you're enhancing the probability that Mandami wins. And that's a dangerous situation. Now, Mandami wins, and he's trying to rally the Democratic elected officials to support him. So he's gotten Hochul, who's the governor, to back him. He has the Speaker of the Assembly, Hasty, to back him. He has the Majority Leader of the State Senate, Stuart Cousins, to back him. The question becomes, does Chuck Schumer, the U.S. Senator, and Hakeem Jeffries, the Minority Leader of the United States Representatives, both Brooklyn political figures, elected officials, do they back him? I think the pressure's on them. And so with a divided opposition, with the Democrats rallying behind Mandami, even though he stands for a very dangerous threat to the future of the city and the state, they seem to be falling into line. And that's very, very troubling because you only have a few people standing up against him. One person you have standing up against him is Jay Jacobs, who's the state chair of the Democratic Party and the county chair of Nassau. You have Gillum, who's a Democratic member of the House of Representatives. You have Swazi, another Democratic member of the House of Representatives, both from Nassau County. So they're standing up and they're saying, no, they're not going to back. So you have three people.
If you know Nassau County, they better.
That's right. Given the demographics, that's exactly right. So the short answer is you have three people standing up, but overwhelmingly everybody's falling into line. And that's very troubling because now you switch to the politics of governing. Now, everybody said, oh, you really don't have to worry about Mandami. There are checks and balances against him. And I respectfully submit that's a false assumption, Governor. Why? Because if Hasty and Stuart Cousins and Hochul have already fallen in line now, how do you think they're going to conduct themselves in their official positions when they have to govern in terms of the state budget or legislative actions? If they say, well, he can't raise taxes, and everybody knows you can't raise any tax if you're a local government except for the real property tax up to a certain amount. Otherwise, you need the state legislature to give you the grant to do it with the sign-off of the governor.
And, you know, unfortunately, Your Honor, on Saturday, today, the governor went out because they have a lot of ceremonies for the Ryder Cup, and she didn't get a particularly great reception out there. And that was one of the places that she made some inroads when she actually ran for governor, because Buffalo, New York, in many ways, you know, because I grew up in Nassau County, but I saw the way the whole Buffalo system works. It's very similar. And the Democrats tend to win or lose based on the same type of situations. And I think that the people in Nassau County who are still Democrats and will still vote for a Democrat, and they are not in New York City, but they have sent her an early message, and it'll be interesting to see how she responds to it. Well,
so far she's responded by endorsing Mandami, which she shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Look, this is the problem that Lee Zeldin, who you and I both know, in his campaign, he lost by, I don't know, 5 points? 5 points or 6 points against her. And he ran actually a good race. For a Republican to win a statewide office, they have to get 35% of the vote in the 5 boroughs. Less than that, they can't do it.
Right.
So the question becomes, you know, she's trying to lock that in. The question is, as you correctly suggest, is it going to be a fall off in some of the outer counties? And what does that mean? It also has a lot to do with who's to be the candidate against Hochul. Now, she has a lieutenant governor who's already announced that he's going to be running against her. His name is Delgado, former member of Congress.
Yeah.
And he's going to be running to the left of her. And that's going to be a problem for her. And he very well, and I'm not an insider, I'm just speculating, but it seems to me if he's running to the left of her, he has a good chance of getting support from the Working Families Party and Democratic Socialists. So she could have real havoc in her Democratic primary. So that's one level of discussion. Second level of discussion is who runs against her in November. And the names out there seem to be Stefanik, the congresswoman from upstate,
right,
as well as Bruce Blakeman, who's the county executive of Nassau County. Mike Lawler, who's the congressman from Rockland County, has already indicated he's not going to run for governor. He's going to run for re-election for the House of Representatives. He's
a person I have a great deal of respect for.
And I as well. And I know Mike well, and I think he's an excellent person. He's a real comer in government, and we're lucky to have people like Lawler in Congress or any other office because he's first rate. But she has a real problem. But she hasn't shown, since she's governor, real intellectual, moral, or personal fortitude. And that's a real problem. She got rolled on the nomination for the chief judge of the state of New York. That was a terrible thing, to lose her nomination for chief judge of the state of New York. Judge LaSalle, a highly qualified guy, was blackballed by the extreme left, led by Swazi, led by Generis, state senator from Astoria, who's a deputy majority leader, who's in bed with AOC, politically, not literally. And the fact of the matter is, they stopped her choice from getting through. It was awful. And she made a terrible political mistake because she gave the state legislature a raise before she got what she wanted in terms of her nominee. What are your thoughts as governor?
You know, that was one of the situations that I learned is that the legislature wanted their member items. And we are at the end of the legislative calendar year, which is in June. And I told them, I'll give you your member items, but you've got to balance the budget. So they send me a budget that's $500 million in arrears. And I said, folks, you better get that or I'm not doing the member items. Well, they didn't do it. And I went through all the member items and vetoed them 8.5 hours sitting in a chair doing that, like signing your name. I've lost the use of my right hand, but I stopped them. And they never got the member items. And you know what? They thought when Cuomo would come in, he would put them back. He did not. Well, thank you so much, Your Honor, for being on The Left versus the Right. This is the second time I've had the pleasure of
third time, but who's counting?
Oh, third
time.
Counting? Well, listen, I can't even count when it's time to go off the air.
I want to know if I get a raise in my stipend for now being a 3-time winner with you, Governor.
We'll keep your salary where it is. We'll give you that. Well, thank you all for listening. It's going to be pretty exciting later on with the music on 77 WABC. This is David Paterson with Judge Weinberg. Thanks for listening.
It's the left versus the right. Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
This Sunday is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Walk Run, and our team is in need of your support. Right now, every dollar counts. The WABC hosts must all rally their loyal audience to participate. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk and help your favorite hosts right here at WABC and support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk. Help WABC raise money for the amazing Tunnel to Towers Foundation Walk Run. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk.